Hi, this is The Greatest Story Ever Played. My name's Dan, and today I'm here to talk about The Shadow of the Tomb Raider. To get into that, our description here is in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, experience the final chapter of Lara's origin story as she's forged into the Tomb Raider she's destined to be. Now, a little background on this game. This was developed by Eidos-Montreal, and they're known for making the somewhat recent Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game, along with Deus Ex. This is notable as the previous two Tomb Raider games, Tomb Raider 2013 and then Rise of the Tomb Raider, were made by Crystal Dynamics. And from the bit of reading I did, it sounds like previously, for 1 and 2 in this series, Crystal Dynamics made the game and were lead developers, and then Eidos-Montreal kind of played a supporting role. And for whatever reason, for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, that flipped. So you had Eidos-Montreal, they were the main one, they made this game, and Crystal Dynamics played more of a support role. From what I read, it sounded like that was a little bit of a challenge at first in the development process, which makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like if you were kind of running the show for a long time and then it flipped and you became the support and the person who was your support became lead, imagine that would be complicated. I don't know where Crystal Dynamics is based. I guess that's a good question. But if it's not in the United States or Canada, I could see even that having challenges if, half of the team lives in Europe and the other half lives in Canada and you're, hours apart. I could see working on a project together being sort of challenging. So, I don't know. Anyway, though, that's some production about the game. Heading to some non-spoiler thoughts. One thing in this game that stood out to me is I felt like it was more claustrophobic and had more height-related scares than the previous games. There were so many times in this game where Lara is just kind of squeezing her way through a tight passage. In this one, there were a lot where she'd do it through bodies or skeletons. Just really claustrophobic feeling. I feel like I remember that happening here or there in the previous games, but it felt very more commonplace here. Same thing with height things where she would be kind of standing and you'd sort of look down and you're like, oh, I don't want to fall. And I guess also the claustrophobic, you'd also have that swimming underwater, going through a tight place while underwater, and you had some of that sensation of oh my god, I personally don't want to run out of air. So that was something I noticed in this game. I had some kind of reactions, I felt like, to those as I played. So that's one thing. Next thing that I wanted to say kind of generally about this is I like the Tomb Raider reboot series a lot. I talked about Tomb Raider 2013 and Rise of the Tomb Raider on previous episodes. I think they are each maybe in January of the years before this. So maybe January 21 and 20 and 21 maybe. That's where I talked about those and went over those, and I like them. I think that this is a good series. This is a good trilogy. And I think they're solid all around. I would say, though, that this one is my least favorite of the three. I think that, I think I'm excited to go through this. Maybe as I talk, I will start to feel a little differently. But this one, to me, sort of feels maybe least memorable, and I was least into the different things that were going on, as opposed to Rise of the Tomb Raider or 2013's game. So I don't know. We'll see. Kind of as we talk through this, but that's, I would say, my overall thing. I think for me, I'm not unhappy I played it. I like the first two. I'm glad to complete this trilogy. All of that. I like Lara Croft. I like Tomb Raider. All of that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I guess with that, we'll get into kind of recap and dive into some spoilers. If you don't like spoilers, drop off here. All right. I guess before we talk about the plot itself, think it's important hitting up kind of our main characters in this game, because there are a couple. So first off, we've got our title character, Lara Croft. She's our Tomb Raider. She's an adventurer, archaeologist, all of that stuff. We spent time with her, and she's more seasoned at this point. So the 3 games that have come out are chronological. And so Laura has had several adventures. They've built on themselves. This journey has built from the first game to rise to this. And has gone through, and her kind of dealings with Trinity. She's grown, all of that stuff. Becoming the Tomb Raider kind of, as the seasoned person. And this is kind of her final leg of that journey. Then you've got Jonah Maeva. He's Lara's closest ally. He's been in all 3 games before this. And you see that their friendship has grown closer as time has gone on, as time has passed, going through these games and the times outside of them. He's like committed all the way, not just I was friends with Laura in 2013 when all this went down in that game, but all the way. Then you've got Unuratu. She's the queen of Paititi. You've got Etzli. He is the heir to Paititi and is the son of Unuratu. We've got Pedro Dominguez. He's or Dr. Dominguez, he also gets called. He's the leader of the High Council of Trinity. So he's kind of our key antagonist here. And then lastly, we got Rourke. He's a leader of the military forces for Trinity. So he's kind of your like second in command bad guy in this game. So those are your main people. So we'll hop into our recap. So the game starts, and you've got Laura in Mexico trying to stop Trinity. Basically, it seems since the last game, Lara has spent her time kind of trying to sabotage Trinity as Trinity is trying to, global domination, all of that. So she's trying to get in their way to stop them, to not let them get these different relics of power and stuff like that. And while she's in Mexico, she discovers that Dr. Dominguez isn't just a local leader of like the Trinity sect in Mexico, but in fact, he's the leader of the High Council of Trinity. So instead, this guy is a big deal. He's looking for something really important. So she's not kind of in skirmishes. She's involved herself in a big deal with Trinity here. Inside this too, there's a temple she's searching that Trinity got to first. They rigged it with explosives to try to kill her. But she manages to escape. Later on, kind of other big things that happen in here is she sneaks into a chamber and she finds this ceremonial dagger. When she pulls when she takes this item, this sort of sets the apocalypse into motion. So on the way to finding this dagger, there's a mural that Lara sees that has kind of 4 catastrophic events, and if these are triggered, this will happen and the world will end. However, if you are the person who wields the power, you can kind of restore the Earth, and that's sort of our like big picture thing going on in this game. So she takes this dagger, Apocalypse is set in motion. Dominguez captures her, takes the dagger, and decides to let Laura go, but says, I'm remaking the world in my image, I need this, and heads off. Soon after this, the first catastrophe comes. A tsunami hits and destroys the town that they're in. Laura kind of escapes after Dominguez lets her go from the tsunami that kind of wrecks the people. And you have a moment here where you get kind of where Laura's at. She needs to go after Dominguez to follow him to Peru to be able to stop this so that the world won't end or he won't remake the world worse in his own image because he's bad. You also see Jonah on the other side with this humanity. Like he feels like, no, we have to help these people. We can help people here and now. We can't go for this greater good just yet. So I think they sort of compromise. They help out a little bit there. Then they head off. So on the way to Peru, you've got Lara and Jonah being flown there to try to stop Trinity. And en route, catastrophe number 2 happens. There's a giant storm, and it causes their plane to crash and rip apart. And you begin the game, or you begin this section with Lara separated from Jonah and the pilot because of how the plane broke. As she tries to go find them, she finds that the pilot was killed by jaguars, and Laura has to fight some jaguars, ultimately making it through their kind of, I don't know, nesting ground isn't the right thing, maybe hunting ground, whatever, their territory. Laura has to fight some of them, but ultimately reunites with Jonah, who is okay, and they kind of figure out, okay, what do we do next? After this, Laura and Jonah are trying to make their way to the town to kind of try to get some clues for, okay, where do we need to go to basically beat Trinity to the punch? Laura has some clues that she had learned, that Trinity also learned, and basically her hope is, can I be smarter and quicker than them to be able to get to these items before they do? And so she's kind of trying to figure out things around town. She goes and finds a tomb on the way there. She ends up seeing a young boy who we find out is Etzli, caught in a trap. And she rescues Etzli and ends up having to kill this guy who's in Mayan armor that has the Trinity symbol on it. And so she kills him and rescues this guy, or rescues this kid, Etzli. Soon after this, you have a group of Etzli's people show up, and his mom, Unuratu, is there among a bunch of their other tribe soldiers, and they take Laura with them because they see that she didn't harm Etzli, that she's not with Trinity, that she's someone else. So they bring her to their village. They found out Laura is good and is working with them, so they kind of have an alliance at this point. You find out who Unuratu is, that she's Etzli's mom, that she's the leader of Paititi, and that she's sort of like the sovereign ruler, or the person who should be ruling Paititi. Meanwhile, Paititi also has a cult that has developed. We see them in the Mayan armor, and we find out that Dr. Dominguez is actually the leader of this cult in this town. So Dr. Dominguez is actually Unuratu's brother-in-law. So she was married to Dr. Dominguez's brother. However, Dr. Dominguez's brother had died, and so now you have sort of these two people. Dr. Dominguez trying to bring glory to Paititi, doing it through Trinity and all of that, thinking this is how I can save the world and make our world the best. And then Unuratu kind of being the opposite side of that. I also want to bring order and stuff to our tribe, but not the way that you're going about it. And so you sort of have your two factions that have developed here. Laura goes, she finds a key that will help open the gate to get there. Later on in the game, you start to have sort of some different challenges, I guess I would say, arrive. You have Etzli get captured again, and he's getting held in a temple that's nearby kind of the gate that Laura wants to go through to find the next object. And so what they set up is Laura is going to go to the temple and try to clear the way some. Then Unuratu is going to come and save Etzli. And then they'll be able to kind of two birds, one stone type of situation. They do this. Laura makes it into the temple. Etzli is rescued. However, shortly after the rescue, Unuratu gets captured, buying time for Etzli and the other tribe people to get away. Laura makes it inside the temple, and she encounters these people called the Yaxiel. They're kind of protectors of this area, and they're kind of feral humanoid people. They kind of look like monsters or demons. They look like people, but are definitely scary. I think if anyone saw them, they'd be scared of them. Laura was scared of them. I was scared of them playing. You end up running through their kind of temple cave area and manage to escape as they're all like chasing after you, trying to attack you. It's pretty wild. In this escape too, I don't think you kill anyone. I think it's more one of those ones where you just run. I don't think you actually end up fighting anyone, if I recall correctly. So that's pretty intense. After this, you make it back to the town and have to game plan again. Okay, well, now we have to rescue Unuratu. And so Laura heads off to do this while Etzli kind of gathers the people. And Lara ends up rescuing her. And while she's talking to Unuratu, Unuratu says, I've trained my whole life to be able to not be corrupted in this moment. I guess as the leader of Paititi, your kind of role is to make sure the world doesn't end in this situation and be able to choose what's best for people, basically. But Unuratu expresses some reservations that, the power of these objects could be so much that, I don't know, you could end up doing a bad thing, even if you didn't set out that way. So she expresses some concern, like, I want to do this, I've trained my whole life for it, but I also know that, like, I can be corrupted just like anyone else, basically. A little after this conversation, Lara and Unuratu are trying to escape, and Rourke ends up killing Unuratu. Laura makes it out of there, but has to tell Etzli, your mom died, and this also puts Etzli in charge. Even though he's like 10, he's the heir, and so he is who will lead their people now. And so he's kind of your go-to with the people of Paititi from here on. After this, too, you have Rourke say that he killed Jonah, and basically is like trying to rile Lara up before this, like, you've caused so much death, these things, and then reveals that he says he killed Jonah. And this makes Lara go wild. She, like, loses it, and you just kill so many Trinity soldiers. You end up getting, like, this big machine gun, and you just mow everyone down. After this moment, you find out Jonah's actually alive. He shows up to try to help, and Lara kind of breaks down, she thought she lost Jonah, and then she kind of lost herself. And after this, it sort of brings her back, but also kind of puts into focus that, like, I don't know. All of this is obviously very important, but I think it also helps her realize that, like, people are important and not just... She can get, I think, so driven on, I have to stop Trinity, I'm the only one who can do this, that something like this, I think, made her see the wider picture. I mean, stopping Trinity is the most important thing. She's not wrong. But I think this helped widen her lens. I think that she, could lose sight of people around her, things like that, if taking down Trinity was kind of viewed too highly, or as the one thing. After talking with Jonah after this, they realized that Trinity and them were looking in the wrong place. That it's not an Aztec or a Mayan temple. Instead, though, it's going to be in a Christian church, because there was a missionary who had stolen these things and hidden them away. And so they find that church, and there's this hidden tomb that's under the church that you have to find secret passageways through and do a bunch of puzzles to kind of keep making your way through the tomb. And you see that if you do this wrong, you'll die. I think that they... it's 7, I think, rooms for a comment, I think, in a painting or something. After this, you do get kind of the piece you need, and then, of course, Trinity finds you, and they capture Jonah and force you to give up the piece they need. You give the dagger, or give up the box that you'd found, so that you could save Jonah. You and Jonah escape. And Trinity's finally heading off. They have all the pieces they need to kind of complete this ritual to... so Dr. Dominguez can kind of recreate the world in his image. So what you've got is Lara heads in one way on her own. Meanwhile, Jonah and Etzli and his people will head in another way, and in hopes of being able to stop and kill a lot of Trinity. As Laura goes in, she runs into the Yaxiel, and they end up agreeing to team up with her. The leader of their group, who is scary, has sort of this moment with Laura, and Laura puts on the garb and the mask and stuff that she would to do this, and they work together. You have the Yaxiel running through Trinity. They're killing so many of them. It's like mayhem for sure in this. And ultimately, this gets to a showdown where Dr. Dominguez is performing the ritual, and you have to fight him to stop it. And so he's like in this sort of half god mode, half not. Laura has this long boss fight with him, where I think you have to like knock him down like 7 times, maybe, or 5. It's quite a long boss fight. You go through it, and finally, as you're like succeeding in the boss fight, you kind of get this god mode glow on that Dr. Dominguez also had. You ultimately beat him. Then Laura ends up talking with the Yaxiel leader, who is called the Crimson Sun or something. And her role is to sacrifice a god to be able to right the earth. And so Lara agrees, yes, I have this power. I will sacrifice myself so you can save the world. And so the leader has a dagger above Laura and strikes it down towards her chest. And just before it hits Laura, the dagger just draws all of the energy out of Laura, this god energy. And it works. After this, the game picks up with Laura is fine, and she is going to help out in Paititi a little bit with Etzli before heading home. And Jonah is going to spend some time in Peru. Along the way, he met a girl named Abby early in the game, who became his girlfriend and all of that. So he's spending time with her. And yeah, that's our game. All right. Moving on to some general thoughts. Again, I said this off the top, but I don't think that this game is going to stick with me that much. There was not a lot that I disliked about the game necessarily, but there also wasn't a lot that I liked. I feel like it felt more forgettable, or that sort of stuff. I think the big thing I'm really going to remember is all those tight spaces, because they made me uncomfortable. But otherwise, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of things that I really take with me on this versus like in the first game. I just remember being so struck by oh my gosh, this game is violent. I like the group of people that she had with her. With Rise of the Tomb Raider, I thought that the setting was pretty interesting with the kind of Soviet sort of former camp and sort of the kind of stuff that went on there. And one of your main characters in the Resistance there I enjoyed a bit. So I don't know. I'm not sure what it was. I guess for Etzli also, he's 10 and he wasn't annoying. He wasn't an annoying kid, but I also didn't I don't know. All right, this 10-year-old should be their leader, and I'm into that. I understand how that could happen, but as a partner, I was a little less into that. So I don't know. I do have a bunch of Tomb Raider related things though in my general thoughts that I think are interesting. So one thing is that Netflix is making a Tomb Raider anime that takes place after Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So it kind of continues this storyline. So that sounds interesting. I would probably watch that. I like this reboot series. I like this Lara Croft. Very into all of that. So if there's more, I'm definitely into that. So I'm gonna keep my eyes out for that. I think that would be fun to watch. Maybe it would be a fun thing to do a one-off Patreon episode or something on. So that's something I'm interested in. I guess big picture wise for Tomb Raider, last year the Embracer Group bought Crystal Dynamics and Tomb Raider from Square Enix, along with a couple other studios. So this is pretty notable. Tomb Raider changing hands. I am sort of surprised that Square Enix would just offload Crystal Dynamics, and Tomb Raider. Like, I think those are valuable properties. I think Tomb Raider is a iconic character and franchise. So to sell it, and I think it was for $300 million with some other studios. So like, to me, that seems like a really good deal. I can't believe someone would just give it away. But I don't know. So that's notable. I think that allows for a lot of different potentials, I would say, with Tomb Raider and what will come or won't come. I do like, I guess, also just kind of talking in all of this, I like Lara. I like Tomb Raider. I want more. It sounds like Crystal Dynamics is making the latest game, so it's switched back over to them, who will lead up the next game. And it sounds like the next game is going to be Lara as a survivor further on. So not just this reboot Lara Croft, who's kind of new to being Tomb Raider. It will instead be a seasoned Tomb Raider. They're also Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who did like Fleabag and a bunch of other stuff. She is developing a Tomb Raider TV series for Amazon. And apparently it's going to connect with this new game from Crystal Dynamics. If you look up the Tomb Raider game being developed by Crystal Dynamics, it's actually being published by Amazon Studios. And so I guess what this game and what this show will bring is it will be the same Lara Croft and the same story and be connected, which is interesting. I'm intrigued by that quite a bit. As it goes with Amazon, I haven't watched a ton of their shows, but they can definitely go in on their shows regarding money. Like watching the first season of Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings show. They didn't spare expense. It looked great. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge makes good things. The things of hers I've watched, I've enjoyed. I think she could be great for Tomb Raider. So I have good hopes for this. I think this is cool. I'm pretty interested in the idea of a game and show being connected. And I don't know. I feel like that could be all around great. If you love the games, that might get you to watch a show you may not have. If you like the show, that might get you to play games that you haven't. So I think that's cool. I'm super intrigued by that. I'm glad that the games are back with Crystal Dynamics. I think just liking the two previous more than this one, I'm glad we're back with them. And yeah, Amazon, I think, has good potential, all of that. So there's that. And final thing, just as sort of a shout out of more Tomb Raider stuff, I went on cutscenes with Jacob, Katie, and Travis, who've all been previous guests on this podcast several times. We talked about the Tomb Raider film, the first one with Angelina Jolie, on their show Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast, at the end of 2021. So if you want to hear us talking about the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider, the first one, check that out. And I'll retweet that. It was a lot of fun talking with them about this movie. So yeah, if you want more Tomb Raider and me, I was on that. And then, of course, the two previous reboot games that I've talked about before. So yeah, those are all my kind of general thoughts here. I think overall, this game, okay. But then overall, I'm excited about the future of Tomb Raider. I will play the next game. I want to watch the show, all of that stuff. So, yeah, I'd say that's what I've got. Finally, gonna move to a little bit of listener feedback to hear what other people thought about this game. First up, we've got Johnny on Twitter, who said, I enjoyed it. My only complaint is that they hid much of the character development. They had such a good setup of Lara versus Amaru, about who is really the monster willing to do anything for their cause. It's really a redemption story for Lara, but it's only visible if you look hard. Yeah, I think that that's a good point by Johnny here. Is you have Amaru or Dr. Dominguez trying to do what's right for Paititi, and he's doing it in a bad way. But you also see the same thing happen for Laura. I think there are multiple times where she has conversations, I think with herself or with Dr. Dominguez or otherwise, where it's like, you've also killed a lot of people to do this. And, are you good or not? And I think that that is pretty interesting. That Lara isn't innocent in this. It's not like, I think she does want to be altruistic, and stopping Trinity is ultimately a good thing, for sure. But it's I don't know. It's not without. It's not like you're, I don't know, being quote unquote righteous or something the whole time, or only that way. So I think that that's a good point here. Next up, we've got Chris on Twitter, who said my least favorite of the reboot trilogy. Me too. I agree. Next, we've got Nikki on Twitter, who said it's been a while since I played it, so I don't remember much of it, and I'm not even sure if I finished it. I do know that I did enjoy it up to the point that I played, if I didn't finish it. So, yeah, I think that really matches kind of my sentiment here. I'm not sure how much of this game I'll remember either, so I feel that. Next up is Acidic Ace on Twitter, who said, it's my favorite out of the trilogy, which I think is an unpopular opinion, but I loved Paititi, like the overall pacing of the game, and the threat of the apocalypse was a nice thrill to the story. That's great to hear. I'm glad this one's your favorite. That's cool to hear. And glad to see some of these things resonated for you that didn't with me. I think that's something that's really valuable about people's feedback and hearing what others thought is, me or anyone else who comes on the mic. It's not like we are the definitive source or the only experience. Instead, everyone has a lot. I do think I wanted to call out one thing they said at the end, the threat of the apocalypse being a nice touch. I agree. I thought that was pretty cool. And just sort of how that built. And finally, that boss fight where they're both kind of God mode. It went a little longer than I would want and felt somewhat annoyed part of the way through. But I really liked how it looked, and I thought it was really cool as a thing. And then Laura, needing to decide if she would sacrifice herself to stop the apocalypse. That's all really cool. The natural disasters that were happening, that was all really cool stuff. So I did like those things kind of around this, for sure. Next, we've got Total Nerd on Twitter, who said, I think it's the worst of the trilogy. I think it spends too much time in Paititi, and I just didn't find it as interesting. Yeah, again, I think that we're probably pretty similar views on that as some of the ones I shared. So, yeah. Finally, we wrap up with Eli on Twitter, who said, I really liked how it went for a sort of horror vibe. The parkour and story was great. Combat wasn't the best, but was still fun. I think these are good points by Eli. The horror vibe, I like that too. There were definitely parts in this game that just actually scared me. Whether the claustrophobia or the Yaxiel, there were things where I was like, what the fuck? This is scary. Which was good. I thought that was cool. I like that stuff. And I also agree about the combat. For whatever reason, I had less fun in the combat in this game than the previous two as well. I don't know if it's that you fought less people or how that went. I felt like I had more stealth in this game than previous ones. Other ones I felt like I got to do stealth, but I was using the bow and arrow to kill people. This one instead, I felt like I was doing stealth, but I was having to sneak up behind and stab people and sort of get through things that way. My memory could be wrong on that, but that was something I noticed when I was playing this, is I had more fun I remember having more fun playing the previous ones. And this one, I like some aspects of it, but I felt like I was less engaged in the combat than I was before. Again, my memory could be off, but that's what it felt like to me as well. Cool. That is all we've got then. So, yeah, if you've got other thoughts on Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I'd love to talk about them. I'm on Twitter at StoryEverPod. Our website's TheGreatestStoryEverPlayed.com. That has a backlog of all of our episodes we've done, including the Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider games. I also covered, I know that they're not the same, but I feel like they're adjacent. I did cover all the Uncharted games over the years as well, so if you like Uncharted, those are there too. I know for me, I like Tomb Raider and I like Uncharted. I feel like if you like one, you probably like the other, because they do add some similar stuff to each other. Also, you can find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. If you would like to help the podcast financially, you can do that at patreon.com/TheGreatestStoryEverPlayed. There, for as little as $1 per month, that will get you access to a monthly bonus episode that we do. These have been topical in nature. Sometimes they're video game focused, sometimes they're not. Most recently, I've shared thoughts about the Last of Us TV series. I ended up doing a review of the pilot, and then I also did a review kind of mid-season over a couple of, I think the first 4 episodes of my thoughts on that. Other things I've done, I've talked about my favorite Pokemon. We've done that before. I reviewed all the Star Wars films over the summer last year or so, and kind of ranked them all. So if any of that stuff sounds like stuff you'd be into, go check it out. If you'd like to support the podcast but can't financially, that's totally cool. One way you could help out is just to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcast or on Spotify. I think these can help get the show in front of more people so we can share in these games together. I think that's, again, one of the most fun things about this is getting to share games with you all. I think this would be fun by myself, but it's definitely better to share it with you all and hear what you think, because you all have really thoughtful things and different experiences and all of that. It's valuable. So, yeah, I'll say that's the episode. Draw the line there. And yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.